What's going on, guys? RussellMuscleTV here, back again with another video, and in this one we are covering Survivor One World in our daily Survivor Retrospective series. That's right, going from Season 1 to Season 40 of Survivor in 40 days, leading up to the premiere of Survivor Season 41. And today we got a special guest here as we're joined by the Underdawg Survivor. How's it going today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on RussellMuscleTV. My name is Underdawg Survivor. And I just love talking about Survivor like all of you, and I'm excited to talk about One World today.
Yeah, before we get into it, tell me a little bit about your channel, how you got into Survivor, things like that.
So I've been watching Survivor for almost 10 years, and it's always been my favorite show. And recently, kind of during quarantine, I started just really getting invested in the series, rewatching different seasons, and it's always been something that I've enjoyed. But my fandom, I feel like, has really gone to a new level. And I recently started this YouTube channel because I want to talk about it online. It's just always fun to me to talk about it with people that also appreciate the show. So that's what I love doing. And if you are interested in talking Survivor, head on over to my channel. And I'm sure we'll have some great discussions over there as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'll leave a link down to Underdawg's channel down in my description. Make sure you go check him out. Leave a like on all his videos, subscribe to his channel, and of course mine as well. Turn the bell on. We post daily Survivor videos. Starting things right off the bat, we get the One World twist itself. I think that's kind of the perfect place to start. Underdawg, what's your thoughts on this game mechanic of living on one beach?
I think the One World twist itself, I actually really like it because it allows for tribes to intermingle and mix together and not necessarily have it be a begonging, which is ironic given how the season goes, that the men get picked off one by one. And I think the reason for that, or a big reason for that, is because the tribes were also divided by gender. And if they weren't divided by gender, I think the twist would have worked out a lot better because there wouldn't have been already this dividing line between the two tribes, and they probably would have been more willing to work with the other side. But overall, I think it provided for some very interesting moments in the first 4 episodes of the show.
Yep, I feel the exact same way, and I kind of wish Survivor would bring back this One World idea for another season or two. They'd have to rename it something else, because I don't think they're going to do it again, calling Survivor One World, just because this season has such a bad kind of taste in everyone's mouth, because no one really liked this season when it first aired, and it's kind of got worse and aged poorly as things went on. And so if they do it again, they'd have to call it Survivor 1B, or I don't know, whatever they decide to call it. I really want them to do it again, but I don't understand why they had to make it even more complicated, add in the men versus women dynamic. That didn't need to happen this season. The One World twist and idea itself is cool enough by itself. You didn't have to add more layers to an already new and fresh idea.
I absolutely agree. I think there were so many interesting moments, from the catching of the chickens by the women and not really being willing to share, and then tribes going to each other's camps and try and stay dry or offer help and making deals. That part of it, I think it's really cool, and it's a dynamic that you don't see in any other season. But just the men versus women thing, I think, kind of killed it.
Yeah, the only other situation I can think of is in Cook Islands when Ozzy, Cowboy, and I think it's Flicka somehow walk upon the other tribe's beach. But other than that, this is the only opportunity in Survivor where you can have these people interact with each other mid-game in the early parts of the game when they normally wouldn't. This season had so much potential, but ends up being a miss because, it's in the dark ages of Survivor. It's bad season after bad season.
This is a pretty popular opinion, but the cast of characters was pretty weak. It's not the worst that it's ever been, and I think that everybody here had a minor role to play, except maybe someone like Leaf I thought was a little bit bland, but that could be because of the editing. But I feel like everybody here at least tried to play the game. That's not to say that they played it well, but I think everyone at least made an effort, which to me puts it a step above seasons like Redemption Island and Thailand, but it wasn't a great cast by any stretch of the imagination.
Yep, and I have this season pretty bottom tier as well. We'll talk about that near the end of the video. If you guys don't know, at the end of all my Survivor retrospective videos, I leave a rank on the season. It's kind of a fun way. We have a tier list going every single season. Another new dynamic that's added into the season is, for the first time ever, the hidden immunity idols. There's gonna be no clues. If you gotta find an idol without a clue. And this is the dark ages of Survivor, or the Russell Hantz era of Survivor. And Russell kind of changed the game in that sense with finding idols without clues, They kind of go back and forth on this idea a little bit in the Dark Age season. Sometimes they make it so impossible to find an idol. The clues are way too tough. In this season, for the first time, they're doing no clues at all. But the more interesting dynamic, which is, again, diving a little deeper into the one world kind of thing and feel of it, if you find the other tribe's idol, you need to give it to someone of the other tribe. And I think that's such a cool idea. They can add these interswapping alliances between the two tribes that could go on further later into the game. Ultimately, I mean, it kind of flops and doesn't really turn into anything. But can you see so much possibilities with this twist?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's very unfortunate that one idol that Sabrina found that she had to give to the men went to Colton. That was just such a buzzkill. And then even more of a buzzkill was when he went home and didn't give it to anybody, which just really flopped. But I think the fact that she had to give it to somebody, that really can build a very strong bond, as we see in something like Heroes vs. Healers vs. Hustlers, with someone like Ryan finding the super idol, gifting it to Chrissy. That creates a super strong bond that runs a lot of that post-merge. And something like that, I think, was a very smart move by production. And it's just very unfortunate. Like a lot of these things in this season, the very smart moves by production, they just really didn't work at all.
Yeah, and another kind of thing that doesn't work in this season is we get right into episode 1 of the show, and we have an evacuation. It ends up working out pretty well in David versus Goliath, but I don't think it works out well here with the evacuation happening, with Courtney being sent home because of the incident at the immunity challenge with the trampoline.
Yeah, it is pretty much of a downer note to start the season off. And as you said, there's a lot of good seasons that do have evacuations or quits. Like David vs. Goliath has an evacuation in the first episode and a quit, and it's still regarded as a top-tier season. Kagayan has a quit, Micronesia has a quit, and 2 medical evacuations, and those seasons are regarded as high ranking on pretty much everyone's list. So I don't think the evacuation itself really takes the season down to a very bad level, but I do think that it's just, you don't start off with the vote out, and it's just kind of anticlimactic, especially since they go to tribal council just to not vote anybody off.
It puts the season starting on a low note from the very, very beginning. And I don't think they're ever able to recover for the rest of the season. Most important thing we see from this first couple of episodes is the power alliance that's built on Solani with Alicia, Chelsea, Kat, Kim, and Sabrina. And once you see this episode where the alliance is kind of built and put together, you can skip to the very end of the game. This is the alliance that's going to take over throughout the entire show.
I think the alliance as a whole has some pretty capable players. And obviously Kim is one of the best players of all time. But I think Sabrina definitely had some strategic ability. So did Alicia. Obviously, she's not the most likable person, and she probably wouldn't win a jury vote at the end. But she did show some strategic ability. So I don't think it was Kim completely running this alliance like it was in Coach in South Pacific or Boston Rob in Redemption Island, where there was like one figurehead. And Kim did make a lot of the decisions, but I don't think everybody else in the alliance was as, stupid as some of the people in the other large steamrolling alliances in other seasons.
I think this alliance, and really Redemption Island, South Pacific, a lot of these seasons have a same theme of, okay, let's get 4, 5, or 6 people together on a beach one time, look at each other and say, okay, this is the alliance, and then that alliance ultimately steamrolls for the rest of the game. And that's kind of why Survivor moves towards the 3-tribe format, or multiple swaps throughout the game, to try and prevent this later on. Because when you see it as a theme of throughout season after season after season, especially in this Dark Ages of one alliance happening first couple episodes of the season, and then boom, that's the final alliance. That's not good TV. That's not fun to watch.
If tribes getting picked off one by one, it's just so boring to watch because there's no intrigue. I watch Survivor because I want to see different people making moves and having there be suspense to tribal council. And when you know who's going home with tribal council, it just really is very unsatisfying to watch. And even once the women's alliance starts to get whittled down, even at the final 4, there's absolutely no suspense. And that is one of the biggest killers of this season.
We give the men's alliance a lot of heat this season, as Kim ultimately dominates, and this whole alliance dominates the entire game. But if you really think about it, if Colton's not here, then they probably have a big lead going into the swap and the merge.
I just want to talk about Matt really quickly. Obviously, he was the first man voted out. I think he was a really fun pre-merge villain. He had definitely some character moments like the chickens and being mad that Chelsea kept both of them, and he thought he was running the show, and he definitely wasn't. But I think that he wasn't very good at the game, but if he made it to the merge, he would have made it so much more interesting. I feel like there's so many characters at the merge, especially on the men's side of things, that just didn't really offer anything character-wise. And I thought Matt was a fun character, so there's your little shout out to your third boot right there. But going back to the Bill situation, that was really one of the darkest points of the season, where there was clearly some racial tension going on there. And I think Bill sort of explained what his rationale was, where he said, like, if he didn't raise his hand to go to tribal council, then he would be the next target when they did go to tribal council next, and maybe they'd even throw a challenge just to get him out. But now we know in hindsight that right after that there was a swap, so he would have had new life anyways. Obviously he didn't know that then, but I think just the feeling among all of the men was, if I disagree, then I'm going to be the next target. And I think the way you deal with that, because that is a real fear, is you got to get together as a group without Colton there and just say, look, none of us want to do this, and we just have to all as a group agree to disagree about this. And then if we all say no, then maybe we'll put a target on our backs.
Yeah, and the game point's one thing, but when you get like personal and especially the racial things Colton puts into the game later on, that's inexcusable. Like, Colton should not come back to Survivor. The first bullet point I have for this swap is, why does Monica Culpepper get invited back to Survivor? Oh, I know it's because her husband, but really, what does she do here?
Yeah, she was a complete non-factor this season. I mean, she was maybe the strongest person in women's challenges. That's about all I can really think that she did. And they sent her home because she was a threat physically, which didn't make any sense to me strategically, because she was the only person keeping them in challenges. That tribe was already completely never going to win a challenge, so maybe they just figure, what's the point of keeping challenge strength? But she was by far the strongest person on that tribe, and they still voted her out for being a threat, at which in the pre-merge, I think trying to get rid of threats is a little bit short-sighted. But yeah, she was completely a non-factor, and you're 100% right. The only reason she gets asked back is because of her husband, which I think a lot was the case for a lot of the cast of Blood versus Water. But yeah, she was, I don't know what she was doing there.
Yeah, exactly. She was really good physically here, does well in the challenges, but you kind of touched on that right away there. This might be the most dominating tribe after a tribe swap in Survivor history. And someone mentions it in Worlds Apart, but this post-swap Solani tribe is insane. You got Michael, you got Jay, Troyzan, Kat, not too good at challenges, but then you got Chelsea, Sabrina, and Kim. Like, these are all huge challenge threats. And then the other thing, what do you have? You have Monica's probably the best challenge competitor you have there. Colton's useless. Jonas is decent, I guess. You have Leaf, and then Tarzan. So this really is a crazy tribe of not fair at all. And I'm really glad they choose the merge after only two people being sent home. And then another thing I want to touch on here, which again, this early parts of the season gets super, super dark the entire time. You have Colton, and especially Alicia as well, just bullying Christina, talking about, oh, you don't want to be here, or Colton says something about whatever's more convenient for you. It's, again, bullying after bullying. So let's touch on this right now. End the debate for everyone. Finish it right here. Did Colton quit Survivor, or was he medically evacuated?
He quit Survivor.
Thank you. I don't know. I've tried figuring this out, because I mean, Jeff was really mad after Colton after Blood versus Water, so it was like, once a quitter, always a quitter. But more things, it looked like he maybe had appendicitis, or he had some infection or something, so we really will never know. But he ends up quitting the game later, so Colton's never voted off Survivor.
Yep. One of only a few people, which is a very interesting company to be in.
Yeah, and then touch on a little bit here, this dynamic we have with Colton, Alicia, and Christina.
Oh, that was horrible to watch. And I mean, part of me is glad that Colton got evacuated and Christina stayed, but I also think the editors did a horrible job showing Christina this season because she could have easily been a hero of this season. She went out the final four. She was bullied this season. Her father had like a kidney
Yep.
transplant thing, and she didn't get picked for that reward. She had so many moments that could have been shown as heroic, and they weren't. And we kind of felt sympathy for her, but also at the same time didn't really. And I think that's terrible job on the editor's part right there.
Yeah, I almost got the feeling this season as the editors make her feel like also bullied, but like they also make her feel like she's a really stupid and doesn't know what's going on at all. Which I understand, like you can give someone the stupid edit. They do that all the time, but don't give someone like the bullying edit, like, oh, like she's getting beat up the entire season and then also getting the stupid edit. Like that's just more like hard to watch. Like you want to look away, like secondhand embarrassment kind of thing. But yeah, after that, Colton's gone out of the game. And lastly, he decides, in the most Colton thing ever, decides to keep the idol and not give it away, give it to Alicia. Uh, good move, bad move, or do we care about this?
I would say it's a double-edged sword because then he would have to do it in front of everybody, and so that would put a major target on Alicia's back. But then again, the women ended up running it all the way to the final five anyways, but then Alicia could have used that there if people hadn't targeted her already. So it could have thrown a wrench into the plans of the post-merge, but not terribly to the point where it would have been a completely different game. So I don't think it's that important. It just goes to highlight how selfish Colton was, really.
Yeah, exactly. And then we finally merge, and this is really where we start to see like the dominating game that Kim gets to play. And it's great too because we didn't really even touch on the post-swap Solani tribe here because they never end up going to tribal council, so we don't see too much of them. But what we see is like a men and woman alliance starting to build. And this kind of really is how the women end up dominating this merged tribe so much, is because the men are so convinced that the women are with them, and it's this post-swap Solani tribe all the way to the end. And because the women are almost playing in the middle until they can just vote out all the men, it's too late until the men realize it, and then they're just easy picking one after one after one. And I think that's, again, like we end up in the first part of the season where it's so dark and so many bad moments because of Colton, and he dominates most of the early parts of this game. And then afterwards, in this post-merge, it's Kim dominating and everyone else not knowing what they're doing. So walk me through this first couple of votes worth of guys getting voted out.
Yeah, I think this is where I feel like Kim separates her game from Boston Rob's. To me, like they're the top two winning games in all of Survivor. I think these two merge votes really show that Kim is a step above of Boston Rob in Redemption Island because she has multiple different ways she could go. She could go with the Women's Alliance, which she ultimately chooses, and she could go with the post-swap Solani Alliance, which is what it appears like she's going with in the beginning. And Rob only had one path to go to the end with, but
Yep.
Kim had two. And so that's where I feel like she had a little bit more power and influence in the game. And ultimately, I think her blindside of Jonas was an effective move. And her blindside of Michael was even more so. And I think ultimately the only person who realized this was surprisingly Jay, who otherwise seemed to be a non-factor, but he seemed to be the first man to really realize that it was men versus women. And he was always trying to push for women to go home, and he just never got his way because he didn't have enough agency in the game.
Yeah, exactly. So we end up going in this early parts of this merge. Jonas goes, Michael goes, Jay goes. Leaf end up going as well, and then we get to Troyzan. How do you feel about Troyzan overall?
I thought Troyzan was a fun character this season. Obviously, he was very polarizing. Some people aren't going to like him being very arrogant when he had his back up against the wall, but I feel like that is how I would play. I'm a person that gets very competitive and very emotional when I have my back up against the wall and there's pressure. So personally, I saw a lot of myself in Troyzan, so I liked his character a lot.
Yeah, I love Troyzan here. Um, ultimately not liking his game in Game Changers. Does he even play Game Changers, guys? Leave a comment down below. I have no idea. But yeah, no, I love it. And there's so many like iconic moments here. And even though like he doesn't have the best strategic mind in this game, he has so many iconic and memorable moments that he gets on the second chance ballot. He gets invited back for Survivor Game Changers. Like, there's so much to like about him here. Like, this is my island, all these cocky things here. And then he really is the last foil of the girls before they really kind of take it over and dominate the rest of the game. And
I feel like,
yeah, what were you going to say?
I feel like he's kind of the bright spot amidst this pagong that's going on, where the girls are completely dominant, and otherwise it would be a pretty boring stretch of episodes. Troyzan's really the one thing that makes it interesting, and I mean, it's evidenced when they have an entire scene devoted to them catching a pig. Like, that's something maybe you do episode 1, episode 2 when you're talking about survival. It's like freaking episode 10. And we're talking about catching a pig. Like, that's how bad it's got. And like, imagine what it would be like if Troyzan wasn't there, keeping some sense of excitement in the season.
Yeah. Then we have the Cat vote off, which again, Cat's not a player I like to see on my TV screen. She's too dumb, it hurts. This season, especially Blood versus Water, it gets even more cringier. But there's just so many moments where the best part of Kat's game for me, and my favorite part of her game, is at Tribal Council when she talks about blindsides are fun, and then she gets blindsided ultimately. And then we have Tarzan going home. Give me your thoughts on Tarzan.
I really wasn't that annoyed with Tarzan. I thought he was kind of a funny character. And he seemed, at some points at least, to be a little bit self-aware, and that he was sort of doing this as a show. I don't really think that's who he is. And that's probably the case with a lot of these like over-the-top, larger-than-life characters that Survivor has on. But I thought he was made for good TV. Again, something that made the show somewhat bearable to watch when there was just complete strategic domination and nothing else was happening. So I thought he was a great addition to the season.
Yeah, and then we have Alicia, who we touched on, Bully, someone who I really don't like and hopefully we'll never see back. Yeah, super annoying and not a good person, right? Like, and she's a special education teacher. Like, I'm scared for those kids.
Scared for the kids that she's teaching. Like,
yes. And then we have Christina, which we already touched on her edit throughout this game. This girl got bullied the entire time. She makes the final 4. You touched on this, like the amazing hero edit that could come from this. And no, we get like, I don't know what the editors were thinking this season. What was the casting team thinking? What, like, this season's just such a what is going on moment. She ends up making the final 4, gets voted out, and then we get our final 3. Give me your brief thoughts on Chelsea and Sabrina before we talk about Kim's winning game.
Well, I think something that was interesting to me in the final tribal was that all the people were talking about Chelsea being this cold person that didn't have emotions and didn't seem to be very nice to people, which I got the complete opposite sense from the edit that she got. That she seemed to really be struggling to separate the game from her emotions, and she was making emotional decisions pretty much at...
Yep. You cut out there. Are you still there? So Underdawg Survivor cut out. I'm just gonna edit this part of the video, but yeah.
Vibe early on.
Oh, you're back. You cut out for a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Where did I stop talking?
About Chelsea's edit.
Okay. I thought Chelsea... I'll just start over with her. Chelsea in the final tribal... Yeah. In the final tribal, all the people were saying that Chelsea was pretty much like a cold-hearted person, and she didn't feel emotions, and she was like completely disconnected from the human connection part of the game. And to me, that seemed really inconsistent with the edit that got. Like, she seemed to be someone that was very difficult for her to remove her emotions from the game, and she was making a lot of emotional decisions in the game, and she was keeping her friendships true, and she was making strong relationships. At least that's what it seemed based on the edit. So I was very confused by the people saying that she was a very cold person at Final Tribal. That just seemed to be really inconsistent with me. And then Sabrina was elected as like the leader of the women's tribe very early on in the season, and she basically did nothing leaderish throughout the season. So I think and really the only reason that people wanted to vote her out was because they said she was well spoken, which didn't end up mattering at Final Tribal because she only got 2 votes. So I feel like they were not very much competition for Kim.
Yeah, and I think that just shows how dominating Kim was. But if you take Kim out of the equation and something happens to her earlier on in the game, I think Sabrina's your front runner and ends up winning the game pretty easily as well. And I would say the producers see the same thing in Sabrina, as she gets to be put on the second chance ballot. The only issue is she doesn't get like a huge presence on the season, so people kind of forget about her. She ultimately doesn't get to play the game. But yeah, and then my big thing with Chelsea is I think she's the weakest member of this final 3, just because her and Kim are so tied at the hip for most of the game, and I almost feel like they're a dynamic duo here. But Kim is the one making the moves. Kim's ultimately the winner of the game and more dominating presence. So we get to see way more of Kim's perspective over Chelsea's, and that's why she kind of becomes a dragged along final 3. Like, what's she really doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she was like a complete goat. I think she had agency in the game, but I don't think anyone was going to vote for her. So I guess in that sense, she was a goat. But her final tribal speech basically just said, yeah, me and Kim were a pair and we made every decision together. Why would anyone vote for Chelsea after she says that?
Yeah, exactly. And now, guys, the one of the main saving graces of this season, Kim's winning Survivor game. And I compare this a lot to JT's game here, and how in JT's game, people were talking about how much they love JT, and I want JT to win the game, all these things. I almost get the same kind of sense here with Kim, as just like you said with Chelsea, she was like, yeah, me and Kim did this the whole way through. Everyone talks about the whole time playing the game, how nice and how good of a person Kim is. And that's ultimately the way, like, she's able to make you feel like you're the most important person in the world, and still being able to blindside you and you're okay with it. Yeah, what's your first thoughts on Kim?
I agree 100%. I thought her winning game was super impressive, and a couple points in the game that I really want to highlight. First, at the final 10, where Jay comes up to her, and Jay wants to go to the final 3 with her, and he sincerely means that, and he thinks he's in alliance with her, and he tells her, for her own good, Troy's going to play an idol, and he's going to try to vote you out. And she said, thanks, and turns around and votes him out. That was one of the most cold-hearted moves of the entire season. And Jay has absolutely no hard feelings about it because Kim is such a great social player, and that even after she blindsided him and she was one of his final 3 that he wanted to go to the end with, she still was able to get his vote, and he wasn't bitter about it at all. And then another moment that I want to highlight is at the final 6, where she doesn't win immunity after winning 2 in a row, and you would think she's the biggest threat, and she's clearly been making all the decisions, and she still has such a good social game that she's not a target at all, and I think that's so impressive.
Yeah, 100%. And I would like, is this the best first-time winner of all time? What do you?
It's up there. I mean, I would consider this the best winning game of all time, but I would maybe consider some other people to be better players. But she's definitely up there.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and you just see that the whole way through. Like, everyone else's like Survivor skill level compared to Kim's is so much different. And looking at the season just by itself as a whole, Kim's one of the best players of all time. And my only issue here is I think Kim's stock lowers a little bit after Winners at War. Thoughts?
I agree to some extent, but I don't think it lowers that much because everybody there, with the exception of Tony, is going to not win again. And I feel like she played decently well, especially considering she was given a pretty bad hand, pun intended, after being part of the Poker Alliance, and she was able to survive 2 votes at the call and also a vote at the swap to call tribe, where she had an idol and she didn't even need to play it. And you know, she was just never had power in that game, and she was still able to survive till the final. What was it, 9-8? I think final 8. So I agree that she definitely wasn't as dominant, and so that does knock her a few spots. But I don't think I think she's definitely still solidly within the top 10 players of all time for me.
Yeah. Okay, so before I wrap up the video, give me your final thoughts on the season.
So I compare this season to Redemption Island, and I think it's better than Redemption Island in pretty much every respect. I think the cast is slightly better. You've got pretty much everybody there has some role to play and is to some degree playing the game, whether or not it's well playing the game. Like there's a lot of people that don't play the game well, but at least they're trying to play, and I think that at least makes it somewhat interesting. And you've got characters like Tarzan, Troyzan. I mean, not everybody's a great character, but you have enough characters there that can, you know, make even the most boring episodes somewhat watchable. And then you have the strategy of Kim, who I think is also a step up over Boston Rob, given that she has more options to choose from. She's making more strategic decisions throughout the entire merge as opposed to Boston Rob. So I think it's better there. And I think the One World twist is a lot better than the Redemption Island twist. There's a lot of potential there. It was failed potential, but I think production should revisit this season, if only just to, you know, take some of these ideas and maybe implement them with a better cast. So I think this season is really just kind of a bunch of failed potential in the end. That's what I would describe it as.
Yeah, I think that nails this season perfectly. That's why I'm going to title this video. Survivor One World is failed potential. There's some redeeming qualities here, like Troyzan is such a good and fun character. The twist itself had potential, but ultimately is failed potential. And the winner, Kim, one of the most dominating ones of all time. Kim is so much fun to watch here. But other than that, I really have a hard time finding anything redeeming about this season. Like, it gets really, really dark with the Colton stuff. It gets really dark with the bullying of Christina. You have a lot of duds and dumb characters who just don't know how to play Survivor, which helps Kim's winning game because it makes her so dominant. But having a dominant win is great, and it shows how dominating Kim was. But I also would like to see a little bit of competition for Kim. So all in all, like, even though we see one of the most dominating wins of all time, everything else is just so tough to watch. And that makes this season kind of a bottom tier season for me. Make sure you guys like the video, comment down below what your thoughts on the season are, and make sure you go check out the Underdawg Survivor. I'll leave a link down in the description for his channel. My final rating for Survivor One World is a 5.1 out of 10. D tier.